Hi everyone, it's that time again when you might be starting to think about your year end. The year end process itself is straightforward. It's a simple wizard that includes a few options. However, before this, there's the preparation stage, ensuring you've posted everything, and of course, it involves running reports. But do you understand your reports and also the opportunities that you have to develop them? Ensuring they're accurate, but also that they provide you with the correct level of detail. Throughout January and February, we're running a series of live webinars to help develop your knowledge and understanding of the management reports available in Sage 50 accounts. We'll be starting with the basics, understanding nominal records and the structure of the nominal ledger. This is also ideal if you need to create new nominal codes. Following on from this, we'll examine the chart of accounts, looking at all aspects, including adding new layouts and editing existing ones. Our attention then turns to the management reports themselves, the trial balance, the profit and loss, and of course the balance sheet. We'll explain how to run them, what they show, and most importantly, how the figures calculate. We want you to be confident. On the management report session, one of the most common scenarios we're asked about is where you haven't yet run your year end, but need to generate a profit and loss report for your next financial year. We've got your back with this and have a specific webinar that explores the options you have available, whether it's running reports for your new financial year or even a previous one. The last webinar in the series looks at reconciling your age debtors and age creditor reports at year end, ensuring that the balances agree with the figures on your trial balance and the balance sheet. Of course, this could be done at any time, such as part of your month-end process. So come along and we'll demonstrate what to check and how to run them to ensure everything agrees. If you'd like to attend any or all of these sessions to help develop your knowledge and boost your confidence, then simply head along to sage.co.uk/webinars and register for your free place. These, along with loads of other topics, including how to run your year end, are available. See you soon.
Hi everybody! You might be approaching the end of your financial year and it's the perfect time to get your Sage 50 accounts in order. The year-end process itself is simple. It doesn't matter if you're a seasoned pro or if it's your first time, it's just a few steps in the wizard. But before you dive in, there are some important checks and housekeeping tasks that will just make everything run smoothly. Things like archiving your company data just keeps it organised and improves performance. We'll show you how to create an archive and why it's a good habit. Then there's backing up your data, which is essential before making any changes, and we'll share best practice just to ensure your backups are reliable. And avoid accidental postings into a closed period by setting a lock date. It's quick to do and it saves headaches later. We'll also guide you through the year-end wizard as well, step by step, so you can complete the process with confidence. If you need to tidy up older unused records, we'll show you how to do that as well in our Delete Your Records webinar. And then we'll also cover how to clear the audit trail. It can help speed things up and we'll explain when it's appropriate and how to do that safely. So to help you to prepare, we're hosting a series of live webinars throughout January and February. These sessions will give you practical tips and demonstrations so you feel confident about your year end and keep your accounts in great shape. Don't miss this opportunity to start the new year with clean, organised data and peace of mind. Make sure you reserve your spot today at sage.co.uk/webinars, and we look forward to seeing you there. Hello everybody, hope you're all well today. Today's webinar is going to be going back to basics and looking at how to back up your data and also check the health of your data within your Sage 50 account software. And that's going to be presented by myself. So my name's Laura, if you haven't heard me before. I'm going to be hosting the webinar today, and we've also got the lovely Michael in the background as well on hand to answer any questions as well. So if you do have any questions, make sure you get those popped over to him. Just as usual, before we get started, just some housekeeping rules there. So your mic will be muted automatically, but you'll see there is a little question icon on the toolbar where you can submit any questions that you may have for Michael there. So make sure you pop them in and keep them busy. And now you won't see other people's questions unless we reply to everybody with an answer to that question on there. And it's just because a lot of questions either have sensitive data which we can't share, or it's specific to them as well. And also because it can be distracting as well. If you're trying to watch a webinar and you can see conversations happening in the questions panel, it might sort of get a bit distracting as well. So I know a few people have mentioned that on previous webinars, why can't they see them? But it's just because of that. I will be including the slides in the handout section as well, as there are going to be links at the end which you might find useful. So if you do want to download those, just make sure you do that during the session. And there is also that printer-friendly version as well, if you'd like to print that out just to make notes. So this is what we're going to be covering today. So we're going to look at an introduction into why you should back up your data. And then we're going to have a look at that in the demonstration around things like why it's important to back up that data, how to take a manual backup, what the schedule backup function is and how that works as well, how to restore a backup into the program, and also how to manually check your data without taking a backup as well. And then at the end, I'll summarize everything that we've covered in today's session and just take a look at further support. So the process of a backup is to take a copy of all the files that make up your company, including things like your username and passwords, and it consolidates them all into one compressed file. This can then only be accessed by restoring the backup into Sage 50 accounts. So some scenarios where we'd recommend taking regular backups are things like if a process doesn't go as expected. So say if you've done something in error, for example, you've reconciled a VAT return accidentally, although individual transactions can be reversed, you can't then reverse the whole process. Or another example may be that you've imported the wrong file and now you've got duplicate transactions. Yes, you could manually delete them all, but it might just be easier and a lot quicker just to restore that backup in. Also for things like disaster recovery, touch wood. So say your computer breaks down or you end up with a virus on the computer and you're unable to access the Sage software and you need to move your data to a new computer. If you're a sole user and you need to move a Sage onto a new computer, you can take a full backup of your data, and after installing Sage onto your new computer, you can just restore that backup up into there. And another scenario would be if your data becomes corrupt, again, touch wood, and the errors are unfixable. So you'd be required to restore a backup in which is error-free. And the reason for this is just because the data files on your computer have become damaged. So this is why it's always important to be frequently checking the health of your data as well. We'll have a look at that a bit later on too. So the importance of backing up your company is to ensure that your data is backed up at least once a day. So depending on the amount that you process. If you process every day, then back up every day, I'd be saying. If you only go in and you process once a week, then backing up your data once a week would be enough. But the last thing that you need in the event of one of the examples that I've just mentioned there happening, and you don't have a recent backup, and then there's a lot of reprocessing to be done. Now, sometimes you might get a message as well. So for things like backing up your data while other users are still working. So if you've got lots of people in the program and they're working away there, and you get a message when you try to back up telling you can't back up while other users are logged in. This is something that you can change within settings, within company preferences. There is an enable check data backup option in there, which I'm going to show you along with the manual process there as well. So we'll have a look at that now. So I'll pop into my program and we'll just have a look at a few things. So the manual backup process, first of all. So I'm logged in as manager at the moment on here, but as long as your user levels have the option to take a backup, you go to File at the top, and we've got the backup option here. So if I click that, Just tells us it's going to close all open windows, we'll lose any unsaved data. That's just if you were in the middle of entering an invoice, for example. I'm just going to say yes to that, drag that over because mine likes to open on another screen there. And we've got some options in the manual manual backup window on here. So we can see here it tells us which files that we want to include, which you can tick and you can untick as you go through on there. If you just want to select all of them and take a full backup, you can tick this select all file types to include in the backup, and that's going to back up absolutely everything for you on there. If it's just your day-to-day processing, you might just want to be taking a backup of your data files on there. So that's just the transactions, records, things like that. We've then got the transaction attachments, which if you want to take a backup of those, you can tick to include those as well. So that's things like receipts or attachments for invoices. And then we've got the reports files and the layout templates as well. So if you've got any customized reports or if you've made any amendments, you can back these up. Really, you only need to be sort of backing those up if you've included new reports or layouts, if you've amended anything, made any changes, you could take a backup at that point. And then we've got record attachments as well. So these are attachments to things like your suppliers, your customers, bank records, products, departments, and projects there. You've got your image files. So if you've got images attached to a product or a service record, perhaps, and also your company archives. Now, you'd only really be needing to take a backup of that if you've just taken an archive on there. Otherwise, I would say you don't really need to be taking a backup of that just because it's a duplicate of everything you've got in there. So it's just going to make that backup bigger. And then if anybody's using the Teamail database, if you still use that function, you can also back that up too. So as I said, you only really need to be backing up the data files on a daily basis. And that's really only if you're processing every day. If you process once a week, you can back it up then if you want to. There's no need to sort of take, as I said, the reports and layouts back up each time you do that. It's only really if you've changed anything that you would need to be taking a backup of those. Another example that I mentioned there was the archive. That really only needs to be backed up as well if you've taken an archive. With regards to full backup, so if you're wanting to take a backup of absolutely everything on there, like I say, you can tick that box. That would be if you say you were going to be moving the data to a new computer, if you were going to be upgrading to a new version, then I would be taking a full backup of everything on there. And then we'll have a look at a bit in how to restore that backup. But for now, I'm going to take a backup of my data files. We'll take the reports and the layouts as well, just so I can show you a few examples in a bit there. You can also take backups of just these on their own if you wanted to. So if I untick my data files, say I just wanted my reports and my layouts backed up, I can back that up and you'll get a message. So if I just click OK, it'll just let us know there's a warning there that we haven't included any data files, just in case you've done that by accident and then you haven't taken a backup of your data files. And then if you just want to continue with that, you can click yes. And then if you want your data files, we'll just click no to it on there. So you can take backups of just those individually if you want to. So I'm just going to say OK to that and take my backup. It'll ask me if I want to check my data, which we can say yes to. If you've just recently checked your data, you don't need to do that on there, but it always comes up when you're taking a backup to check that data. And I'll come on to this a bit later on. So this is my file maintenance report letting me know if I've got any errors, warnings, or comments on here. But I'll come on to that in a bit. I'll close that. Let's just take my backup there for me now as it just whizzes through. And it's quite quick on mine because I've only got quite a small database or a data set on there. Plus the data's local as well. So if you've got quite a large data set, that might take longer. If you've got the data on a server, perhaps, it might take longer because it's got to pull that information o'clock and take the backup from there as well. But it'll be quite quick on my PC here as it just whizzes through it on there. And that's my backup done. So say OK to that. Other places that you can find the backup option as well. So obviously we've gone to file and we've gone to backup on there. You can also find it within your VAT return as well. So if I go into my VAT return, so I'm going to do a new VAT return. If I click on that, the first port of call is to take a backup on there because as you know, once you've completed your VAT return, you can't reverse that. You would need to restore a backup in. So it always gets you to take a backup. So that's another place you can find that. And the backup option is also in your year end as well. So tools, and then period and year end. Just again, that window, just to confirm it's going to close all of the windows. Just drag that across. And we've got the backup option in here as well. So if you're taking a backup as part of the year end, which we'd always recommend to do, you've got the option in there as well. So as I mentioned before, if you do get a message that pops up when you try and take a backup, just saying that you can't run that backup because you've got other users logged in, you can amend that. So I'm logged in as manager at the moment, but if I go to settings at the top, and I'm going to go to company preferences, and it'll ask me just to put my password in when it pops up. Just drag that across. And then in the parameters tab, we've got a lot of tick boxes on here. And we've got the one on the bottom left-hand side, we've got enable check data and backup with users logged in. So if you've got more than one person logged in and you can't take a backup, if you tick that box on there, what the program's going to do is it'll take a snapshot of the whole company data. It's then going to check the data from that snapshot, and it's going to use that to take the backup as well, while everybody else works away in the live data, meaning that you don't have to get anybody logged out. So if you do have that issue where you can't take that backup, if you tick that checkbox within parameters, so it was in settings and then company preferences and then the parameters tab, and it's just that little checkbox there, so you can tick that. I'm going to untick it because I don't need it ticked. There's only me logged into it there. So if I come out of that, we'll just pop back to the slides there. So that's obviously the manual backup there. So you can see that you can go and just take a manual backup. You can also schedule your backups to run automatically. So even if you don't have your software open, it'll take that backup on there. The machine does need to be on though. So the machine that holds the data, so if you just one computer, that computer needs to be turned on, but you don't need to have you don't have to have Sage open for it to take that scheduled backup. The same with the server as well. So if your data is held on a server, as long as that server's on at night, when you've got that scheduled backup set, it'll run that backup as well for you. So if you're not too sure how you've got that set up, if you don't know if you're on a server or if you're just local on your PC, you can check with your IT on there, but I'll be showing you how you can set that up as well. So for example, if you turn your computer off at 5 o'clock at night, and that's where your data is held, but you've got it scheduled to run at 6 o'clock, it's not going to run that scheduled backup. But if your data is stored on a server and that's left on overnight, your backup will run at that scheduled time. So what I do with mine, because mine's local, my data set's local on my PC there. If I know I'm going to be turning my PC off at around about 5 o'clock, I set mine to run at 4 o'clock on there. So it takes that schedule backup at 4 o'clock every day. I've still got my computer on, so it takes that backup. Don't necessarily have to be working in Sage, that could be closed, but it'll still take that schedule backup for me. So the difference there is you can be working away on your computer in other programs with Sage closed. You haven't taken a manual backup, but your scheduled backup is still going to run there. And it only not run if you turn the computer off, like I say, where that data is held. It just means that you can still work while your checks and your backups are running. It means that you don't need to worry about them. And it's a bit of a time saver as well, and peace of mind too, if you know that you haven't taken a backup, but that scheduled backup's been ran. So we'll have a look at that in the program so we can see where that is. And for this, you need to be logged in as manager for the schedule backup there. If we just go into file at the top again, and I'm going to select schedule backup this time. Just let that open up on there. So we've got a few different options down the left-hand side. The first one's the overview. So the overview on here basically tells me I've got 4 companies within Sage 50 accounts. 3 of them have got the same name on there, but this is the company that I'm in at the moment. Just tells us who we've got logged in. So we've got 1 user logged in. It tells us that there's 14 comments found within this company, when the last check data was, or when the last scheduled backup was. And I can see this information for my other companies there as well, which is quite handy. And if we go to settings on the left-hand side there, we've got a bit more information within here. So within the settings option, under the check data and backup schedule, we've got in here, choose which automated process that you want to run and how often we want it to run as well. So it'll do both things for us. It's going to check the data and it's also going to take a backup as well. Now, if you don't want it to check the data, you can untick this if you want to. It's obviously going to give you a message on there telling you how to do that manually, but which was in the file maintenance window, which I'll show you in a moment. But I would recommend leaving that ticked on there. I would leave them both ticked just so you know that they're both going to run there. And then we can choose how often it takes the backup. So I've got mine set to 4 o'clock because I know I'll turn my computer off at 5. So it's definitely going to take that backup. Or if you know that you process a lot of data and you want to run more often, you can run it more than once a day. You can schedule every 1 hour, 3, 6, or 12 hours, and then you can select a time for that to start from as well. So you can run that more than once a day if you want to. I just leave mine as once a day. Then we've got the company names. So I've got my 4 companies there, and you can select which companies you want it to run for. So for example, I might have an old set of data that I don't use, so I don't need a backup for that. I don't go into it. I don't make any changes in it. So I'm not having it. I'm not going to take any more backups on there. Whereas I'll be using these 2 companies, and this is my main one. So I've got those ticked. So it's going to check the data. It's going to run a backup for those 3 companies at 4 o'clock every day there, as long as the computer's on where the data's held. And then over here to the right, we've got the file types to include. So these are just the same as we looked at before there. So the main one is your accounts data. So obviously that's your general processing of your data on a day-to-day basis. If you know that you include a lot of transaction attachments, you may want to back those up every day, but also think about that it might take up a lot of space as well if you're backing up your transaction attachments every day too. So if you know that you're just adding them every so often, you could just do that manually if you wanted. Same with, do you need to back your reports and your layouts every day? Probably not, unless you're making drastic changes every day, but people don't tend to do that. So mainly it's your accounts data that you want in the scheduled backup. But again, it's entirely up to yourself. And then we've got the backup location. So by default, backup files save to the Sage Backups folder, which is created on the C drive on the computer where you store your data. So again, that might be the server. It might be your local PC that you're on at the moment. And you can store backups on any fixed drive on your server. And if required on the server, you can click edit to enter a specific path as well. So if I just use the drop down on mine, I've got the C drive on my computer, and also I've got the OneDrive on there. If I leave it as the C drive, if I edit the folder just to show you what comes up, it'll still take the backup on the C drive, but I can change the path. So say I wanted them to go onto my desktop, I can change the path to my desktop on there on the C drive if I wanted to. But I'm just going to leave it on the Sage Backups folder, and I've got the version that I'm in there just so I know where those backups are going. Again, if you're not too sure how you've got the setup on there, or it might be that your IT have set up your scheduled backups for you as well, you can double check with them just to see how your setup is, because everybody's different. Every company can be different there. And then we've got the server disk space as well. So backups save automatically if there's sufficient space on your server hard drive. The backup manager is going to create backups where there's at least 20 gigabytes of space, but you can change that if you want to. But there always has to be at least 5 gig of space left free on the server's hard drive. So either if that's your local PC or on the server, it has to be at least 5 gig left on there. Otherwise, the scheduled backups won't run. So we just need to make sure that that's not full. Again, that would be one for your IT to have a look at if you're running out of space on that. We'll just close out with that for now. And then if we have a look, we've got further down on the left-hand side, users logged in, just as it says on the tin, it tells you who's logged in, how long I've been logged in for, my computer name, the version that we're on. And then check data results. So the check data results in this tab, you can see the results and the health of your data. So as I mentioned earlier, it's only going to show the results when the machine has been on. So if it hasn't been turned on or if it has been switched on, when that backup's been taken and the check data has been taken, it won't show in here. But you can see mine run at 4 o'clock every day, and they've been taking them for these companies on here. It'll also tell you how many errors, warnings, and comments that you've got as well. So if it's got a red exclamation mark, that means there's errors in the data. You should be then sort of having a look at that and not processing until those are resolved. If there's a yellow triangle, a warning triangle, that means you've got warnings. And if there's a grey speech bubble like I've got here, that means you've got comments in there, which are less serious, but still we've got comments on there. There's also some drop downs on here as well, so I can change how far back I can have a look at it on there for it, and also when it will automatically delete the check data results. So if I say after, I had mine set to every day on there for it, so it only goes back a day on there each time, but you can change that so it'll delete them after they've been in there for a year, a month, a week, however long you need to keep them for. And then we've got backup files as well. So we've got the backup files. It tells us where the backups have gone to on there, the file size, the date and time, the version of them as well. Again, we can have a look. Because I've got this one set to a year, I can change and show my backup files for this month on there for it. Click refresh at the bottom. Should bring those through on there. It's having a good think about. I think I cleared it out beforehand on there. But we can also go back and have a look, you know, within where it's going to delete them as well. So it'll store them for however long on there. I think when I was playing around with it before, I had it set to 1 day as well. So it's just going to show us yesterday's on there for it. But it tells us the total backup size of the files as well there. That's quite handy to have on there as well. So I'll come out of there. And then we're just going to pop back to the slides on there as well, because there's a couple of other things I want to show you too. And that was looking at restoring a backup as well on there. So if we're looking at restoring a backup and when you might do that as well. So you might have run something, you might have run a clear audit trail, for example. So you might have run that up to the incorrect date, or you've reconciled your VAT return incorrectly. And by taking a backup prior to doing these things, it enables you just to go back to that time and redo anything that you need to. But be aware though, anything that was entered after the backup was taken, that would need to be pre-processed. For example, transactions. So if you've taken a backup last night, you've entered several transactions this morning, you need to restore to last night. Those several transactions won't be shown because you've restored it back to that point in time last night when it took that backup. So if you were going to restore over the top of live data, then what I'd always say do is just take a backup prior to restoring anything as well, because what the restore does is it restores over your live data there. Additionally, if your data is held over a network, so if it's on a server, or if you're using remote data access, it's going to overwrite the live data for everybody on there as well. So always best just to take a backup before you do anything. That way you can't do anything wrong, you've got a backup there in place. If you have a multi-company license, you can create a new company by restoring from a backup file. So for example, if you wanted to try an unfamiliar process, but you didn't want to risk doing it in your live data, or you have other people working at the same time in the live data, you could restore a backup in a separate company and then delete the extra company afterwards. If you're using version 30.1 or above, you can also restore a backup into your practice data as well. So it just means you can use the practice data with your data in it, and it's separate from your live data, and then you can have a go of doing any unfamiliar tasks in there as well. When you're restoring a backup, on the backup description box, just so you can see on the screen there as well on that slide, it's going to tell you what's been included in the backup, for example. So whether it's the data files only, or if it includes reports and layouts or an archive, etc. Just what you can see on the slide here. I'm going to show you it in a moment as well. I'll go in and we'll look at restoring something in, but you'll be able to see what you're restoring back in as well. And once the backup is restored in, you would just need the login details that existed at the time that the backup was taken. So if you've got a backup from 3 years ago that you're popping into, you need to use the logon details from 3 years ago. If they've changed, they might be the same, but if you've changed them. So as I mentioned earlier, it copies all of the files over that holds onto things like your logon details as well. So if you have changed them, you're going to need to use or enter those old details. Or if your username didn't exist perhaps at that time, so if you're a new user to the system, you're going to need to use the logon details that existed at that time. If you don't have the logon details though, don't worry about it. Or if you don't have the manager user logon details there, we do have a process in place. So you can give us a call and we can help you out with that. So it's not a problem if you think I haven't got my user details from a couple of years ago, or whenever you're trying to sort of restore it back to. So we'll pop into the program. We'll have a look at just restoring in there as well and what that looks like too, because I think some people can be a bit wary about restoring in. But like I say, if you've taken a backup, you can't do anything wrong because you can always get back to where you were 2 minutes ago if you've taken a backup on there. What I will do is though, I'm going to pop into customers and I'm just going to create a new customer. So when I restore back in, you can see that that's not showing on there. So if I just go to new and I'll just go put in one so it goes to the top there, call it Amy. Close that. So we can see I've got a new customer in there. Now I think, right, I need to restore back to that backup that I took earlier. We're going to go to File at the top and we're going to choose the Restore option. And again, just that window, it's going to close any open windows and you'll lose any unsaved data. And then we're presented with this window here. So I'm going to click on Browse and I'm going to browse to the location. So it opens it up straight away because I've been into it. But if you remember before, it was on the Windows in my Sage Backups folder in version 33 there. And this is my backup that I took just before. You can see there with the date on it as well. So I'm going to click Open to that. And you can see here, I took a backup of my data files, and I also included reports and layouts in there as well. So the more things obviously you include, the longer the backup will take. If you've got a lot of data, again, it'll take a little bit longer on there as well. Tells us the company name, tells us the date, the version of the data as well on there. If it's on an earlier version, that's fine. You'll get a message that'll pop up and it'll just say your data's on an earlier version and the system will just convert it for you. So it's not a problem if it is on an earlier version. You can just pop that in and it'll convert that for you. And it tells us where it's going to be restored to. So it's restoring it to my main company and that's my data path there. So I'm just going to say OK to that. Drag this over just so you can see that. And it tells us you're about to restore data. This procedure will overwrite any data held in the current company. Do you want to continue? So at that point, if you're happy to go ahead with it, you can click yes, which I'm going to do. And what it'll do is it'll run through and it'll just restore that back in for me. So it's restoring in over the top of data files, reports, and layouts. Other options that were in there, so things like my transaction attachments won't be touched, my archives won't be touched, anything that you're restoring in alongside it won't be affected. All we're doing is overriding the data files, reports, and the layouts at this point on there for it. So just let that run through. It's taking a little bit longer just because I've done the reports and layouts, but I just wanted to show you the options that you've got that are available in there. And that's it done. So I'm going to say OK to that. And then it'll just ask me to log in. My details back in there. And that's me back in. Now, if we go to customers now, you can see that customer Amy is no longer there. That's because the backup was taken prior to creating that customer on there. So just to sort of show you what I mean by the fact that when you restore it back, anything that you've entered in between taking that backup and looking at restoring it, you won't have that in the data anymore there. One other thing as well, which I'll show you as well, is just if you can't see the option of taking a backup. I know we're slightly going to run over the time there, but just to show you, if you haven't got the backup option, we go into settings at the top, logged in as manager, down to user management and users. And I'll just show you in here just quickly, because I know sometimes people say, well, I can't see, I haven't got the backup option. And if I just go into my other user, Laura, I'm just going to edit that. And I'm going to go to level of access. And if you remember, it was in the file option, the backup. So if I scroll down to file, use the little drop down and this backup option. So if that's not ticked, if I logged in as Laura now, I then can't take a backup. So if you're thinking I can't take a backup, if you get somebody to have a look at it, there may be a reason why you can't take a backup, but it's just because that option's not ticked there. Just come out with there. So I've got one more slide to show you on there as well. So with the summary on there, so when you're using things like remote data access, Sage don't store copies of your data, and sometimes that catches people out on there. So you can select a full backup or specific areas. So depending on what you've done, you might just want your data files only backing up, or you might want to run, if you're running year end or clearing out the audit trail, you might want that full backup with absolutely everything on there. You can check your data manually without having to go into a backup on there. And it also, when you restore the data, like you've seen there, the restore overwrites your live data. So back to the point where the backup was taken. So anything processed after that backup was taken, then you know it's no longer going to be there, just like that customer I created there. If you're unsure, you can take a backup before restoring back in there. That way you can always get back to where you were. If in doubt, just take the backup. Scheduled backups, they run in the background and check data for all companies selected on the computer holding the data. So that's if it's your server or if it's your PC. And should you find any errors within your data, the backup manager can help identify when errors occurred. So you can see when you need to restore back. And if these are unfixable, if the errors were detected, or if you get a message the next time you log in telling you, and I'll pop back into my program because I just want to show you that as well with regards to that check data manually. I know we've slightly overrun, but I'll just pop back in and show you because I know that we alluded to it before. But if I go to File at the top, and this time if I click on Maintenance, and we get this window, which I'll just drag that over. So we can see the last results. If I wanted to check my data now, I can just click on Check Data. I don't need to do that because I've literally just checked it. If I click on Last Results and drag that over on there, so we can see in here, this will tell us if we've got any errors, warnings, or comments. So I've got no errors, there's no warnings, but I do have some comments on there and we can expand on them just by clicking on the little cross there. It might be quite small on your screen, but there's a little cross there where you can expand them as well. If you do have any errors or warnings or comments, now comments, they're not usually anything to be worried about, but definitely don't continue processing if you've got errors. If I just show you in our help center, because there is an A to Z check of our for any errors that you might have. So I'll just open that up now. I'm going to move this onto another screen so I can see that one. The one I'm going to look for is item quantity is 0, but I'm just going to drag that out of the way so I can show you. If I open that up on here, the help center. Oh, that's the one I want. So in here, so I'm just on the Sage Help Center, which you can just go to, it's sage.co.uk/help. And I'm just going to type in A and then a dash and then Z. And I'm going to search for that. And there's one called A to Z Index of Check Data Errors, Warnings and Comments. Now, if I click on that, it's going to open up this list for me. Any errors that you have, any warnings, any comments, if you just start typing them in here. So I had one that was item quantity, and it brings it up straight away. So we've got here. Now we've got credit note, we've got invoice. I've done a drop down on mine and mine shows it invoice. I'll just bring that over so you can see. So on the drop down, it tells me that I've got summer invoices and I've got 2 sales orders in there as well. Normally the fix is the same. I'll move that out of the way. Just go back to that screen. Now we've got, it shows that it's a comment, which we know. If I click on fix now, it tells me the steps to fix that. So it gives us the description and it gives us the resolution as well. I just wanted to show you that because that can be really handy on there. What it says, if you do ever find that you have errors or warnings or comments or anything like that in your data, take a backup, which sounds a bit odd taking a backup when you've got errors in your data, but take a backup of your data on there, because if we ever needed to look at your data, we always want to have a look at it before anything's been run on it, any recovery tools or anything like that. So always just take a backup of your data. But hopefully that's quite handy for you to have a look at on there, but it just tells you what those are in that window there. So I'll just pop back to my slides. And find where they've gone. There they are there. So as promised, I've included some links on here, just to some useful guides on our Help Centre, which you've seen that the Help Centre is quite useful there as well. And it's just at sage.co.uk/help, or you can download the slides today and you can just click on them. So we've got backing up your data, restoring the backup and the scheduled backups on there. So everything we've just covered today on the webinar there. And I'm just keep that open for a few moments longer. It looks like everything's been on top of, or Michael's kept on top of everything there with the questions. Don't forget, you will get a recording of today's session as well in around an hour's time by email. So if you do want to watch it back at your own pace, or give it to a colleague to watch perhaps, then that's going to be available for you too there. I always find sometimes if you're watching them back, then you can pause them as well if you need to. And you can also access our webinars page at sage.co.uk/webinars. All the past recordings are free to view in here, along with signing up for our upcoming webinars as well. The link's just on the slide for you there too. And we've also got our community hub, which if you haven't seen this before, it's an online forum for Sage 50 accounts users to share knowledge and swap ideas and solve problems together on there. It's completely free to join, and you can ask questions where other users, along with Sage experts, can help and advise you, or if you know the answer to something, you can pop on there as well. But you can keep updated with what's happening, and it's open 24/7 as well. But there's a link just on there which takes you straight to the hub. And I have included an additional survey as well, which I hope you don't mind taking a quick look at. It's basically just to help us shape our learning around what matters most to you. There is a QR code, which you can scan with your phone on there, but there is a link on there too. So when you've downloaded the slides, if you wouldn't mind taking a look, if you've got a couple of moments there. But that does bring us to the end of today's session there. So I hope you found that useful, and it just makes sense why, or makes more sense really, why you should always take a backup on a regular basis. I always say, if in doubt, just take a backup on there, because then you can't do anything wrong. As always, you'll get a survey when leaving today's session, which I'd love it if you could leave us any feedback or any comments around what else you'd like to see, or if there's anything you'd like to see done differently, and also, what you liked on today's session. We do like reading those comments there. But for now, thank you for attending, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.